Yo, what's going on, everyone? You already know it's another episode of Capturing the Game Within the Game podcast featuring me, your host, Desmond Jones, and my man, Juwan Stewart. Today, we got a special guest. He is the CEO of HerHoopStats. His name is Aaron Barzilai.
Nicely done. That's
Thanks.
exactly right.
Let's get it. Let's get it.
Yeah, I'm super impressed. Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, with a name like Barzilai, there's not that many letters, but there are many crazy pronunciations people have called me over the years. I think the one of the more surprising was, as I remember that when I had my freshman basketball team in high school, coach used to call me Barcelona. I was like, how do you
Barcelona? Wow.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, like, that's a real word, right? Like, you should know how to spell that one.
So what? Yeah, go ahead, John.
No, so what? Like this, you got Barcelona. Then what other names have last name like people try to put out there that may be close but not, not even
mispronunciation is probably Barzilai.
That's what I thought it was. Honestly, I honestly thought it was.
Well, I think because the ending AI and the last two letters of my name, right? It's uncommon. People want to see that IA for some reason, like their mind just does that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel a little, that makes me feel not so bad when I mispronounce in particular players' names as well. But yeah, no, it's definitely been hard, and it is. I'm totally. I know people have mispronounced my name all the time if they've never heard me say it, and even if they do hear me say it once or twice. So I just say, you can call me Aaron. I'm not going to be offended.
Well, look, the fact that I can pronounce your last name, I may have to call you by your last name. Now I gotta be careful because I don't want to do it too much. Then
you're gonna butcher it,
right?
And then you gonna butcher it.
I'm gonna butcher it, and I don't want to do that. So I may just stick to Aaron. Just for
they used to call me Bars back in the day, so that's easy.
Bars.
Yeah. Every time you say something, Bars.
Yeah, exactly. my wife's a teacher, and her students will call her that too. So.
Mrs. Bars, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think they give it Mrs. when they just call her Bars, but
that's funny. Cool. Yeah, no, it's good. So, oh man. Well, Aaron, man, go ahead, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I'm so again, my name's Aaron Barzilai, as you said. I'm the founder and CEO of HerHoopStats. I've always loved basketball, always loved math. I actually went to MIT undergrad, and I was on the men's basketball team there. We were not very good at all. But you can't help but get decent at playing basketball if you're practicing 2 hours a day for 4 years. So yeah, right. So that was probably I don't remember being all that aware of the girls basketball team when I was in high school, but certainly the women's basketball team at MIT I remember. And actually now the most recent women's basketball coach left MIT, interestingly, to become an assistant for the Memphis Grizzlies, Sonia Rahman. So it's part of the it's exciting to see kind of more and more women kind of making their way in the NBA, in addition to all the growth that we're seeing on women's basketball in general. So I've always loved basketball, always loved math, never really thought kind of working in sports was a career. I remember actually when I was in college, and I'm much older than you guys. So back in the day, I actually tore my ACL in essentially spring practice after the season, my I guess junior year. And so my friends were like, oh, you should totally declare for the draft so that when you're undrafted, your name will at least come up as the players who declared early but weren't selected. You always get that list. I thought that was the closest I'd ever get to professional sports. So I went to grad school and spent a lot of time wasting time trying to this was back, I tried to come up with a better formula for the BCS. I was at Stanford then, so the Stanford football team I think was getting pretty good around then. And it's always kind of been sort of, we were talking before, right? So I studied mechanical engineering, and but I'm always say I'm the world's worst mechanical engineer with a degree from Stanford, because my project was very interdisciplinary. So I spent some time doing classic mechanical engineering, some time doing electrical engineering, and then also some programming as well. So that's really where I learned a lot of skills that I'm applying today. And so after I finished up, I decided I didn't want to try and be a professor, and so I went into the working world and worked at a couple of companies. Eventually, I live in the Princeton area now, Princeton, New Jersey. So it's central Jersey, which is kind of nice because it's very small town where we are, but we're not that far from, suburbia, I guess you'd say, around Princeton. So, you got your Targets and your Walmarts and chain restaurants and all that stuff, right? So we've got civilization, even though we're kind of isolated where we are now. And then like you can get on, New Jersey Transit and like take a train to Penn Station or like an hour to Philly. So it's easy to like see a show or do something like that, go to a go to a game or something like that. So I moved up here, started working in consulting, and around that time, that was when I first really learned about basketball analytics as a thing. I mean, I can definitely kind of still remember I read an article in the SI season preview. I think it must have been like 2004, 2005 season preview that Chris Ballard had written, who's a great writer. I definitely would recommend him to you, listen to you and your listeners. I see you guys nodding. And it was just about this like emerging thing of basketball analytics. And I was like, like I never really played baseball. I knew baseball analytics was a thing, but I had never played like Little League or anything like that. So like I never really thought about it. But I was like, I'm like, maybe I have a chance to, actually be reasonable about this, right? Like it doesn't sound insane, right? Like I actually played in college and, went to MIT and Stanford. So I thought like I had at least a chance of being, about as good as other people who were doing it. And so I just kind of started it as a hobby. This was like back when there were message boards. It was pre-Twitter and everything like that. I remember when we sort of switched over to Twitter. And so as I started like participating on the message boards, and I actually I built a website called it's still vaguely there, but don't go check it out, called basketballvalue.com. That
I'm gonna take a look.
No, I think it's like totally down actually now because I haven't upgraded it. It's on ancient technology, but basically I was doing like plus minus data, like sort of near real time. I wrote a bunch of code to kind of parse the play by play, go through the play by play and figure out who was in and who was out and where the subs were. Especially back then, a huge issue was just the quality of the data. And so like kind of every morning before I went to work, once I finally had written all this code, I just kind of processed the games, clean them up, and kind of update the site. And you could see kind of the plus minus. So this was before like it was on Wnba.com, and I was obviously inspired by a couple of people that have been doing adjusted plus minus data back in the day. Dan Rosenbaum, Steve Alardi also did some. He and I wrote a couple papers together, and so I just kind of started doing it because I loved it, and it just kind of seemed like a really interesting thing to me. And that was also, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, but it's a pretty big conference that brings a lot of kind of movers and shakers now to Boston every year. Daryl Morey and Jessica Gelman are kind of the co-founders / organizers of it, and the Sloan School of Business at MIT actually. Tons and tons of students are now involved, but like the first year we did, it was in all my old classrooms. It was like maybe 100 people. Now it's like this gigantic thing in the convention center in Boston with like thousands and all kinds. Like Obama spoke at it a couple of years ago. I don't know how much that of our ticket fee went to that, but so I just happened to get into basketball analytics at the right time, and I just kind of slowly but surely just made lots of connections and just kind of doing my thing. And I got a couple small little projects doing consulting actually for the 76ers, then actually worked for the Memphis Grizzlies for about 4 years. I guess my title was probably analytics consultant. I sort of did that while I was kind of part-time with my old consulting firm. So that was really nice in that because as I think, like working in sports is a pretty tough business. So it was nice to kind of have that kind of back up and not especially because the lockout happened during that time. And so like I wasn't in quite the precarious position a lot of other people were. And then after that, I went and was the director of basketball analytics for the Philadelphia 76ers for about a little more than 2 years. So I was there for the Andrew Bynum year, as I call it.
Oh, Lord.
This is back in the day. So it was Doug Collins last year coaching, I guess last year ever coaching in the NBA. And then I was there for the very beginning of the process. Sam Hinkie was hired, while I was there, and I kind of lasted about a year working with him. He brought in eventually his own people, which is a classic story in sports, right? Always lots of turnover. We're just saying, it was in the news recently for the 76ers, in fact, over the weekend. And just now that Daryl Morey's actually the GM there rather than Houston. And so since then I've been kind of doing lots of consulting with like the league office, teams, agents. But interestingly, a friend of mine who I'd worked with at the 76ers a few years ago, Alex Varlin, at the time he was the video coordinator for the Tennessee Lady Vols, or he got a job as the video coordinator there. And so he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, Aaron, like, I'm used to having access to all kinds of information on the men's side. Is there anything you could recommend on the women's side?" And like I was vaguely, over time, especially as I was getting older, I was married, I had kids, having kids, you get a little more focused. And so I was really just kind of all about NBA all the time, because it sort of felt like on a Sunday, if I'm working in the NBA and there's a NFL game and an NBA game going on, like it's kind of clear which one you should watch. So over time, my sports interests, I guess, have narrowed compared to my youth. But so I was vaguely aware that there had been some challenges with a stats site that was out there, and more importantly, I remembered that Sue Bird had written an article in the Players Tribune, I want to say in like 2015, like sort of talking about kind of as part of really just a lack of parity, just how there's a lack of parity of information in women's basketball. And so like I kind of looked around, I was like shocked that like 2 years later, like no one had really worked on it, and there still wasn't anything I could really recommend, especially when I walking around this conference and there's like literally thousands of students trying to figure out a way to kind of break into sports, and yet no one had sort of taken up Sue Bird's call to arms with something that was like an obvious need. And it just felt like everything I had done up until that point kind of really prepared me perfectly, except for the fact that like obviously I'm not a woman. I didn't play women's basketball growing up. I followed it pretty closely when I was at Stanford, because that was like right after the program was still quite good. It was right after Tara Vanderveer had actually been the Olympic coach in '92. So you couldn't help but follow it a little bit. And that so I know a bunch of names from like the late '90s, and then it was like huge gap in my kind of understanding about women's basketball history that I've been educating myself about. And then more recently I'm following it obviously very, very closely. So I said, like, since there's not anything I can recommend, like it just seems like I should build something, should try to do something. And so I thought a little bit about how I wanted to do it, and whether it was a hobby or could eventually be really kind of a sustainable company. And we're a long way from that, but we're working hard. And so kind of I intentionally made the decision, rather than try to just do work for the power schools like Tennessee that can afford it, and wanted to also make sure like Middle Tennessee State, or whatever small college you think of, smaller school you think of, would have access to the same information. And similarly, right, like UConn can afford it, but also I hope Quinnipiac or Hartford or something like that. And so that's where our kind of mission is, really to unlock better insight about the women's game. We're trying to unlock it really for everybody. And so we started as a stats site in 2000, really for the 2017-18 season. It was it's been quite an adventure. Certainly not what I would have guessed when I first embarked on this journey. I had, intentionally reached out, and I had a couple of friends that were just kind of helping me out as they were kind of between projects themselves. I'd actually met a young woman that was a Division III basketball player at Carleton. I met her at a conference, and she was kind of helping out a little bit, particularly around social media at that time. And so we really started out as just a stats site with a social media presence. Follow us at HerHoopStats. I need to get better at plugging it. And I was pleasantly surprised that some people were kind of finding us. I feel like, the very early adopters, like ESPN was really interested in, because they're just, I like to say that it's not really, I'd like to think that it's about the quality of our work, but I think really it just spoke to the need in the market, right? I think that's why people were interested. And so I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of people in and around the game. And, but it's not like we have a ton of subscribers yet. We're kind of working on that. And hopefully some of your listeners will subscribe to our stats site, because we intentionally priced it at $20 a year so that everybody could get it, as I was saying earlier, not just the the power schools or whatever. So the idea is that maybe the Middle Tennessee State women's basketball community, to use my earlier example, would essentially be crowdfunding it, right? So instead of asking the school for a ridiculous sum of money that's way more than their budget, right? If people are all paying $20, then we all get this information, and and then that sort of lets us, instead of having day jobs, actually be able to focus on improving the site and doing even more interesting work. So it really should be win-win. So, but after that first year, it was clear that it wasn't really going to be something I could focus on full time. And so that's when I first put out a call for volunteers, because I knew that it wasn't something I just wanted to be doing by myself, because A, I just lacked the perspective, and B, I value having the different perspectives on our team. And so amazingly, tons of people kind of reached out over Twitter and response and said, "Hey, I'd love to help out." And that's really when we launched our newsletter. And so we articles. And so we started doing writing and kind of covering the game as like a journalistic platform as well, and then expanded to a podcast. John Little did our first podcast. Now we've got Gabe Ibrahim and Christy Winter Scott, who calls games right for the Mystics, is do a podcast typically on Wednesdays. And we also do this unplugged podcast that Megan Gower leads as well. And so now we're experimenting in video too. So we're really trying to be a full-fledged kind of niche basketball platform. And, as more people subscribe, and that lets us kind of actually pay the people so that instead of being volunteers, they can, I always say, right, we're earning maybe 1%, 5% of what our time is worth. But the more people kind of use our site and help fund us by subscribing to the stats site, the more that people can spend more time on it. And then it's just kind of positive, like I said, a lot of positive feedback. So as I said off air before we started, I am a bit of a talker, but it's been a very kind of meandering process. Definitely not something that I would have mapped out like when I was a student, like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start like a women's basketball stat site. And geez, I guess dating myself here, but more than 20 years after I graduate college. But but it's been a fun adventure. And really kind of, I think, I like people, so it's really fun to be a part of a team. I like basketball. I like all levels of basketball. And I like the numbers as well, right? So I'm going to be, our site is, inevitably a little less about the culture, as they say, than some others, right? Where, we've kind of experimented with doing some interesting things, right? But, we're definitely not going to be covering, sneaker culture quite as much as some other places are. But, we do a wide range of content, because we understand that there's so much more to basketball. You can't sort of work for a basketball team without understanding there's so much more to basketball than just like the numbers. You can't manage basketball on a spreadsheet. And so that insight that we're trying to bring, part of it's the numbers, part of it's the data, but it's also interviews. It's also kind of breaking down X's and O's, kind of understanding implications. We just did an article a while ago. We did an article trying to estimate the value of a WNBA franchise, because those are never kind of reported in the same way. When the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx were just purchased by A-Rod and Mark Lore, right? Like that, Woj reported that number immediately, but that kind of information didn't come out when Mark Davis bought the Aces in Las Vegas. And so, we're trying to cover things like that. We just had a fun article about how we crossed the 1,000 mark for the number of WNBA players in history. I think we're up to 1,004 right now. So that was a fun thing to do. So, there's lots of interesting things that we can work on, and we're just trying to kind of play our part in the community. It's been exciting in the 4 years or so that we've been doing this to see the community grow, and some of the friends that we first met in 2017, 2018 kind of move on to exciting, growing their careers too.
So it's two things that I mean, from like you said you were a talker, but which is good because I like that, because then it makes my job easier at the end of the day. So the first piece is, you said you went to MIT. First off, like people don't really know, like a lot of people don't know what MIT like truly like. That's like the mecca of
for real
engineering, like for anything. Like for one, that's even get into there, that's a whole different thing. Like, how was that experience, for one? Two, then the second part, just of you said you founded a need for HerHoopStats. Jeez, I butchered it. But just how did you get to that point of just seeing that need and just saying, I'm gonna go for that?
Sure. So in reverse order, right? How did I see it? It really was my friend Alex calling me up. I just kind of had just wrapped up a sort of a media project. We were trying to do short digital video on using storytelling in sports with analytics was kind of the tagline for that one. And so I was, thinking about my next chapter, right, as they say. And then my friend Alex called me up with this question, and I was like, like I've got time now, and like I wish I could recommend something to you. I'm really surprised they can't recognize something to you. So like, why not me? I'd already, I'd had my whole NBA journey, and so I already had my old NBA website, so I kind of a little bit felt like I'd done it, and the people at like Basketball Reference and others, do a great job. So I sort of felt like instead of making like the 2000th NBA site, why not make you know, basically the first kind of women's basketball stats site, not exactly, but kind of the first one to really be out there again recently. And so that was really the genesis of it. And then and so like I definitely had to as I said, educate myself, learn a lot about the game, learn a lot about the issues people are facing. I mean, it's definitely been a great experience to learn that and to hear the stories from the various people, both kind of in the game and also like the incredible number of people and the incredible people on our team. We have a very kind of it's very interesting how we get people that are sort of represent all the archetypes really of what kind of women's basketball fans are, right? Some people are older, some are younger, some are in school, some are recently out of school. Some love all women's sports, and so they're following women, women's tennis and soft, NWSL and softball. Some people are all about basketball, which is kind of where I fit in, right? I'm, much more about watching kind of WNBA, women's basketball, college, NBA, and men's college basketball. And as they say, basketball never stops. So like that keeps me busy. I can't add much more to that at this point in my life. But yeah, we have a whole lot. Some people kind of really like the analytics. They don't know so much about basketball, but they think it's interesting to apply it to sports. So we got a nice cross section in a lot of different ways. So that's really the short version. Is my friend called me up and said, "What could I recommend?" And I said nothing. And that's so why not build something I could recommend? It's kind of my idea. As far as MIT, it was a fun place. Yeah, no, it's interesting. A lot of people have heard of it, so I'm glad you guys have. Certainly, a lot of people haven't. I actually remember a friend of mine from Virginia. She was on the women's basketball team at MIT, and she was basically deciding between like Virginia Tech and MIT at the time, and she had really like never heard of it. I think like her counselor must have recommended it to her, and she's like, "What is that? I've never." Totally unaware, and her friends had never heard of this crazy school, and it's still weird, right? Because it's in Massachusetts, but everyone calls it MIT, so it's not totally clear where it is. But MIT is definitely a love it or hate it kind of place. They talk about drinking from the fire hose is kind of the classic phrase that people use there. But I loved it. It was good for me. I'm an optimist by nature. So, it's definitely eye-opening, right? So many people there at school have been like, valedictorian or near valedictorian at their in high school. And then suddenly, it's like the proverbial kind of, used to be a bigger fish in a small pond, and now you're a small fish in a big pond. So, I mean, like I've met some unbelievably smart people undergrad, people that are kind of like working at Google and retiring at a ridiculously young age, and have done all kinds of crazy stuff, maybe for the NSA or working in finance or but one thing that's fascinating about it, right? We this is really true of all of my experiences, whether it was undergrad at MIT or when I was at Stanford and got my PhD there, or working really in the NBA. It's like when you're hanging around with these people every day, like you see them and they're just kind of normal people, right? So everyone makes like the rocket science jokes or whatever like that. And it's like, we used to always say like having seen all of these people that were studying aeronautical, astronautical, engineering when they were like sophomores in college and just total crazy sophomore college students. The idea that these are the people that go on to work at like Boeing and Lockheed and like are the ones keeping me safe at 35,000 feet are just like it's craziness, right? So they're just normal college students, and the same is true at PhD. It really kind of demystifies everything when I got my PhD. And then I've sort of met a lot of people in the NBA. Rod Thorne, if you know who he is,
name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was the one who drafted Michael Jordan. He's
right,
done a lot of consulting. He was sort of like, I guess you would say GM emeritus when I was with the 76ers, but just a total legend in the game. But just a nice guy, great storyteller, friendly, and so it's just kind of interesting to meet all these different people and see um every cliche, right? They're just, people just like you and I that, they're not infallible. It's kind of a reminder of how much, I think to make it in sports, when I talk to young students, I always say, I think it takes three things. I think it takes talent. But there's a lot of people out there with talent. I think it takes hard work, right? But most importantly, I think it really does take luck. You need to be in the right place at the right time.
Mm.
You need to kind of impress the right person, and and you might be in a good situation. It's just like a draft for a sports league, right? Like you might end up
Yeah.
with the first or the second pick, and then it just might be a year that player is not great, and so even though you had a high pick, you didn't get the next Michael Jordan or whatever. And so there's a lot of very talented people that kind of work in professional sports. Some work for a while in professional sports and then decide to move on. Some kind of get a bad break, and then end up having to leave. But I mean, people, you have to work really, really hard and be talented, but that luck definitely plays an important role in everything we do.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk about the MIT tip because like MIT, like girl, like
I haven't
MIT
talked about college as much in a while. I was a boring college student, I think.
like MIT was like a dream school for me. Like, that's like the top of the tier. Like,
Yeah.
you want to go into engineering, you look at that like as like the plateau, the golden temple almost, And so I mean, like, I got big respect for anyone that goes to MIT, or even just people that enters the engineering field, and let alone have a whole PhD in it, regardless if they use it or not on a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely the black sheep, right? And that is not sort of traditionally using it like some people do. The people in my lab group. But I mean, I do think, right, for anything,
Mhm.
another thing that's really important, right? Just the kind of learning how to learn. Like that's another cliche they talk about in grad school, but like it really is true. You sort of figure out, and it's amazing to think now about what you can learn online. Like the concept of online learning just didn't
Oh
exist.
yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
remember kind of points when I've been between jobs, I felt like I could sort of go to grad school again for free. As all this kind of online learning, Coursera and the like, launched, as they were just starting to gain some traction.
Yeah, that's like, I'm a big advocate of self-learning. Like,
Yes.
yeah, like currently I'm in school, but I also do a lot of self learning on the side as a way to continue to advance myself, develop myself, and
Mhm.
just continue to just add skill sets. Like, you can't, I feel as though you can't never have too many tools in your toolbox. So that's the same thing, same way I treat my skills. I can't never had too many skills in my skill set. So one thing that we're actually working towards is learning how to do data analytics stuff. And so that's why I look at you like as a model. Like, okay, I can see
Careful.
I see how he's doing it, and I look at her hoop stats, and so one of the things I wanted to ask you about was like, knowing that there really wasn't anything out there to start with. What was some of the thought process that went into creating the stats for the women's sports for WNBA?
Sure. So, we actually started with college. I think a lot of people don't realize that women's college basketball is actually more popular than the WNBA right now.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
But, in contrast on the men's side. But although I guess, maybe not the Final Four and stuff, but broadly speaking, I think that's definitely the case. And so, I mean, I think the number one thing for anything, right? And I sort of actually distinctly, as I embarked on my basketball career, kind of applied the same thought process. It's very similar to like when I got my PhD. Like the first thing you do is essentially a literature review, and sort of survey what's out there, right? For anyone who's listening that's trying to start something new, like the first question is like, what's already out there? Maybe it's not new. And I mean, certainly basketball analytics, right? It's the classic story about being built on the shoulders of giants or whatever. And so, the number one thing that I focus on is just like parity, right? Basketball Reference does an amazing job for the NBA. At the time, they had way less WNBA stuff. Stats.nba.com didn't exist. And so, like, we weren't trying to reinvent new stats. There's so much work, that's been done in basketball that I think is really kind of important to understand it. And so really it's all the sort of fundamentals kind of things, right? Like we didn't invent any new stats really. There's, Basketball Reference is a model. Ken Pom is a model, if you follow that, for men's college basketball. And sort of I'm friendly, having worked in the game for a while, I'm friendly with those guys. And so, I just knew that like, hey, you need the per game stats, per minute stats are interesting to kind of control for pace to some degree. And then, a lot of people, they hear like basketball analytics and, they think it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo and kind of craziness. And, why can't they, just play the game the old way? In the NBA, they talk about how three-point shot ruins the game. And it's like, I mean, again, like I remember being in high school and I guess it was the early 90s. And like my friends and I, we would talk and everyone would say like, what's the worst shot in basketball? And it's like a 3-pointer with your foot on the line. Right. And so like the idea that taking a long two, like an 18-footer in the NBA is a bad shot is kind of a new concept. It's just wrong. And, it's been going on for a while, right? The person that really kind of first worked on per possession stats, kind of not, to control for the fact that like the, super fast-paced teams, right? People would talk about like Steve Nash and the Phoenix Suns, 7 seconds or less, that kind of thing, and compare that to kind of late 90s Knicks, slow it down sort of stuff. But like Dean Smith did that back in the day, right? Kind of looking at per possession. It's like, why don't we just do it in terms of how many times you run up and down the floor, and like what percentage of the time you run up and down the floor do you actually score, and how many points do you average each time you kind of have a trip down the floor. And so like the math, I always say like analytics is typically kind of the stats you're familiar with like with a smarter denominator. It's like on base percentage. It's like, I got this crazy idea. Like, let's not ignore walks. Like, let's treat that basically like you one more at bat and one more hit. And it obviously goes from there and it's gone to the nth degree. But so many of the concepts are really pretty fundamental and pretty intuitive. You can explain them well. And, I always said when I was working for teams, and I still believe it today, like, I don't necessarily know you need to have the fanciest models or whatever. I mean, there's power in having good information, but like, I think ultimately what's most important is that, especially working for teams, that organizations really use it, right? Like you could have the smartest people in basketball working for your front office and coming up with like a great draft model or whatever, right? For trying to understand the future performance of players you might draft. But like, if they're kind of stuck in the basement and the scouts have the kind of the strongest voice in the room, then like it doesn't do your organization any good. And so, I really, and particularly when I was with the Memphis Grizzlies, and it was particularly early in the analytics era, I tried to really focus on just kind of getting the whole team to understand like, hey, there's more than per game stats. Like we could look at per minute to kind of control for how much playing time someone's getting, and then we could look at it per possession, right? And like, someone like the classic example back then was like, people talk about how Kobe would have like 26 points on 27 shots. I think actually, I forget who it was in the NBA, WNBA the other day had this, but it was a ridiculous kind of ratio. And so it's like, well, it looks good, right, that they've scored 26 points, but it's like, and they had 16 free throw attempts. So that's actually basically 8 other times they would have had a field goal attempt, but they were fouled. And so like those don't disappear, right? That's part of your thing. Like, let's count those too. And so really, I think so much of that is how I look at the game and how I think lots of people can look at the game. And then the other really important thing is like, you can't have too many crazy formulas and messages to players in particular, right? Like the typical model is, a good analyst is generating lots of ideas, maybe having lots of insights, but they'll kind of understand what the most important ones are. And maybe they'll bring 2 or 3 to a coaching staff or whatever. And then the coaching staff will say like, okay, that's great, but like, here's the one we're going to talk about today. And that's what I'm going to write up on the board pregame and kind of make sure the team's focusing on. So, you really need to boil it down to simple messages so people can just kind of be playing in the flow and not overthinking it.
So how much did you watch the Ben Simmons saga this season for the Sixers?
I watched a bit. I mean, not over the whole season. I was more kind of monitoring it, I guess I would say. I mean, I'm definitely not watching every Sixers game or anything like that. Especially it's so hard because, there's during the NBA season, there's also men's and women's college basketball. So
Right.
I was trying to mostly watch women's college basketball, kind of keep an eye on NBA and what's going on. So yeah, the Ben Simmons stuff is crazy. I mean, most importantly, it's like, you see the videos that come out every summer, like they did just the other day, where he looks good in the gym, and it's like, oh, what's gonna happen? But yeah, that was just, I mean, I definitely watched that live when he passed up that dunk. You were just like, did a double take.
Yeah.
So, and then I was pretty shocked, frankly, at the how the team talked about it. Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers talked about it at the press conference afterward. That was the most surprising thing to me.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you think like his numbers from the analytical standpoint, do they suffice the critique, or should he be doing more?
I think so much of it is just the curse of expectations, right? There was a moment there because Brandon Ingram, right, I think was the second pick that year, and so there was like a moment in the whole journey of that college season where people were sort of asking the question like, oh, should Brandon Ingram maybe be the the first pick this year, after Ben Simmons had been kind of the anointed one for more than a year, really. And I think that was just people looking for content in, I don't know, February or something like that. But then, like, he didn't play much defense, right, in college. His college team wasn't very good. But he, like, I mean, he's super talented. Like, he's definitely, I think, better than I expected coming into the league. But then, it sort of fits in with the self-learning thing. I mean, I don't really know him that well or anything. I don't know. Yeah. An insight, but from the outside, like, I mean, everyone talks about like shooting the free throws and shooting jumpers of some kind, and he just seems to be resistant to that. And so, he's certainly not adding to his game the way, like, say, Jason Kidd, if your listeners remember that, was able to add that 3-pointer, the shooting
little shot.
He never could do that early, and he did that late. And Magic Johnson was famous for kind of adding something, I thought, every off season. And so, like, we haven't seen that kind of learning from him kind of translate to the floor during the season, during the playoffs. And so like, I think he's good, but I think that and I do agree that, like, if you built the team around him, in a different environment, he might be able to kind of thrive with kind of more spacing and sort of the mix of the two. It's tough to make that work. And so it's interesting to think about what would happen if he was in more of an environment like Giannis's, or kind of more of a place like, Houston. There's a lot of talk about that, and what would happen if you really kind of surrounded him with shooting. But I mean, I think the thing you got to remember, right, is like, he's certainly one of the 20 best humans in the world at playing basketball, I think, right? But he's not, top 5. And so I think, there's this weird thing where, like, if Brandon Ingram, in this example, right, kind of gets to be as good as him, like, everyone's gonna be all happy about it, right? And if you were to do, like, the top 100 list comes out of there side by side, somehow we're happy about Brandon Ingram because he's second, and we're not happy about Ben Simmons because he's first, right? And so people kind of don't remember that, and it's just a reminder, right? You see it with right, Terrence Mann, right, whose mom used to coach at, I want to say, Providence, certainly in Rhode Island. And now she's an assistant with the Dream. And so, like, he was like the 41st pick, right? But he kind of persevered and kind of was able to show what he could do in the playoffs. And the example that I think of is when I was with the Grizzlies. I think I must have come a year later than this, but if you remember OJ Mayo, right?
OJ, USC.
Yeah. And so the Grizzlies traded OJ Mayo for Kevin Love, another example from around that time is like Tyreek Evans. And so he, like, looked really good that first season, but then over time, like, didn't really kind of progress. And so, like, that's kind of what you gotta wonder with Ben Simmons, but he's also still young. It's obviously been a crazy start to his career, but, like, I mean, when I was like my first week on the job with the Grizzlies, we traded for Zach Randolph. That kind of, I had nothing to do with that. But I mean, at the time, it was like, I remember saying, like, hey, his numbers are great, but, like, there's a lot of concerns with him off the court, obviously, the whole Jailblazers thing and that sort of stuff. And but like, he was in the right environment. He matured a little bit. I mean, he's obviously is he an Indianapolis guy?
He's from Indy.
He's from Marion.
So, he's from Indy. Yes, you guys are from Indiana. And I think he's still had some issues, right? But but I think he also matured, right? And
Right.
so it'll be really, I have no idea whether Ben Simmons will be traded or not, but definitely, one thing you learn again, kind of working with teams is like the human element. I think we all just kind of view them as like fantasy players on our fantasy basketball teams, and so we don't think about those kinds. Some of the mental health stuff has really been kind of coming up in the press in a lot of
Right.
different contexts, but like it's hard, right? It's hard to be the Toronto Raptors and relocate to Tampa for a year. It's hard to be in the bubble.
Yeah.
And so people have a sick parent. Carl Anthony Towns, right? Unfortunately, his mom died.
Mom passed.
And,
Yeah.
whatever that was. And so like people, and I remember that, right? Like when I was in my very small world, right? Like it's hard to go play hoops after something negative's happened in your life. It's kind of on your mind on the as you're heading over to the court and stuff, and kind of you feel like you're not all there. So I can only imagine in a environment like the NBA, where it's like the cream of the top crop. And there's a reason that all 450 NBA players, right, all people like to complain about the sort of 10th person on a bench, whether it's on the NBA or the WNBA. It's like, right, that means you're basically the 100th best woman in the world if you're not getting any minutes in the WNBA, but you're consistently on thing. And it's like people that call them horrible, like I just think that's just totally crazy. They're incredibly talented, and if you ever played pickup with a man or a woman that's playing professionally at any level, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I most certainly agree with that. I mean, I'm a big Simmons fan, so I just always hope the best for these players and athletes going forward. So
yeah, I mean, what did you think? I thought it was interesting he didn't play for the Olympics, right? The Australians were not happy with him for that one.
I mean, my thing is I don't see why he didn't play. I get it, it's mental. It's a mental thing. It's just as much mental as it is physical. But I'm like, it can't be that hard for him to just shut down completely in the playoffs, like for his team. Like he had a layup on Trae Young. Like Trae Young 6'2". You're 6'11", Ben. Just go up and dunk the ball. Like, I don't care if you get fouled. You may miss the free throw. That's fine. At least attempt a shot, please. Don't pass it.
I relate to it though, right? I was a point guard. I was not very good, and so I totally overpass, right? Because I'm always passing up shots like that, so I can empathize with that. How about you, Desmond? What did you think?
Man, that should have been a highlight reel. That should have been something that
it should have been on the top 10 plays. Like we should be like, hey, he punched on Trae Young. That's what happened.
Right. And the 76ers moving on to the next round because of it.
Yeah. It's weird, right? It's definitely a weird time in the NBA. It's similarly in the WNBA. It's like, there's 3 teams at the top of the W right now, and it just sort of feels like any of them could move on. I personally think I'm at the moment pro Seattle. I think that they're probably the best.
That's a juggernaut team, man.
Yeah,
that's a tough team.
Yeah, but Jonquel Jones, right? It's been amazing this season. Asia's been amazing this season.
Lloyd, Stewie, like the whole squad has been doing good this whole season.
EDD's back, so Deladon's back for Washington. So I'd be fascinated to see how that plays out. It's kind of rough to come back against Seattle right yesterday.
Right.
But Tina Charles has just been out of control this year, and so it's going to be fascinating to see. I wasn't sure that she'd be able to sustain what she was doing at the beginning of the season for the whole first half plus, right, whatever you would call that chunk before the Olympic break. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it meshes with Deladon and kind of having someone else there that's as talented, or actually even probably more talented if she's fully healthy, frankly.
It's a good 1-2 punch.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Miesemann had come back, that would have been unbelievable. I was a huge fan of her during the Mystics run. Finals MVP, Emma Miesemann. So, but I guess, I don't think anyone sort of said officially that she's not coming back or coming back, but it seems like the writing's on the wall. So, but yeah, it's a fun time, right? Because there's just a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of, uncertainty NBA too, right? Which I think factored into the schedule announcement that we just got. And, it's sort of unclear kind of who's going to happen there. And then, it's there's not one dominant team, but there's a few good ones, and so particularly the WNBA, I think it's really exciting that those three teams are at the top.
Yeah, I'm excited about the WNBA just because when I know when it comes playoff time, it's going to be crunch time, and this all is going to be that competition just taken to another step. Just because like you have the three teams, like you mentioned, but then you have like the next tier that can get into that top tier of those three teams, like whether it's Chicago, and I'm slipping my mind of
Minnesota, I think is the other one, but
Minnesota's
I'm
another one.
skeptical. I don't, as much as I like Minnesota, I am skeptical. I think those three teams are a tier to themselves.
It's just crazy that Minnesota's been able to keep that team. Well, we're losing Maya Moore,
exactly,
like keeping that team still in contention. Even I'm like that just shows you just kind of how the supporting cast was just that great when she was playing. But then if she was to come back ever, I don't think she will at this point. I think she's probably done. But if she was, like, that team would be right back at where they would be at the beginning.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Cheryl Reeve has done, great job coaching and a great job drafting, right? They got Collier.
Exactly.
Nafisa, I think was she the sixth pick that year? And Dangerfield, right, was a rookie of the year. I think she was pick, and then was the rookie of the year last year. So and Fowles is still amazing. She played really well. I remember at the beginning of the Wubble last year before she got injured. And so I still think that they can do, they can do things. I think Chicago, I think I had them second in my like preseason power rankings or whatever. We all voted on the HerHoopStats team. And I had really high hopes for them. And it hasn't quite happened yet. But the interesting thing, right, about the WNBA playoffs is like, because of the structure, like someone could definitely, I mean, Connecticut kind of did last year, right? And hop in and go quite far.
So who is the top five right now? We're going to just put it, just who y'all top five teams?
Who's my team?
Yeah, who your top five? You said Seattle. You had Seattle at kind of one.
I think that's what I said. So I was just voting on it today for us. So Seattle, I would go Seattle, Vegas, Connecticut. But one thing, right, that I've learned from the analytics, like just because I'm saying they're 1, 2, 3, it doesn't mean there's a huge gap. I mean, I think any of those games, the way I always think about it is like, what are the chances that they would win if they played like a 7-game or an 11-game series or whatever, or 100. They played 100 games tomorrow, right? Like I mean, I don't think no one's gonna win 60, right? Like it's gonna be 52-48 someone. So, but I would give a slight edge to Seattle, then Vegas number 2, then Connecticut number 3, big gap, and then right now I think I have Minnesota 4 and Chicago 5. Phoenix I'm intrigued by. It's actually interesting how few teams are over 500 because those 3 teams are so good. It's not like there are 6 teams that are over 500 and 6 teams that are under. Last time I checked. In fact, I'll look that up to make sure I'm not giving you wrong information. But
no, I think you're pretty right about that.
Yeah. So I guess there's 5 now because Mercury are 13 and 10. So those 5 teams are the 5 teams that are over. I guess the Mercury are. So I'm a little skeptical on the Mercury relative to the Sky. Partially that's because I think the Sky can come together. They got so much talent with Candace Parker and her homecoming. And then the other thing, right? So if you actually, and you can see this on our site with our kind of search functionality, if you take a look at, not just the record, which I think a lot of people tend to focus on, but on margin of victory. Phoenix is actually 6th in the league in margin of victory, even though they're 13 and 10. The Sky, even though they're under 500, are 4th in margin of victory. They're winning by, I guess they're 5th by points per game at 2.1 points per game if you add up their scores. But they're per 100 possessions. So again, controlling for pace, they're 4th, just ahead of Minnesota. So those are really the teams that I'm the highest on.
That's crazy. So you kind of mentioned some very important. So one thing I want to ask you, when looking at stats for people that are new or, trying to figure out what or how to handle these numbers when they look at them, what's the most important stat or what's like some of the basic stats that people should either appreciate or look into when they're looking at these numbers?
Sure. So for a team, definitely it's, the score tells a story, right? So if you think about a 1-loss record, which is what we're all kind of used to, and how many games back, right? It's a binary. You either win or you lose, and it doesn't matter if you win at overtime or you win like a 1-point game at the buzzer.
Mhm.
Or you win by 30, right? And so, but there's information there, right? Like when Seattle beat Connecticut in the Commissioner's Cup game by it was like 20 plus, right?
That's kind of bad.
You know what I mean? Like that's different than if that was a toss up. And it's just one night. It's not like they're going to beat them every time by that score, which is why I said earlier I think they're all kind of in the same tier. But that is information, right? And so the number one thing to look at, really, I think for teams is kind of their margin. Not just their record, but their cumulative margin of victory over the course of the season. And then again, not really per game, but looking at it on a per possession basis. So you got a faster. So just looking at what the WNBA, the Aces are the fastest team in the WNBA, and so they're going up and down the
That's
floor.
crazy.
Like yeah, right. But they do 84 possessions per 40 minutes for each team. So they're basically going up and down, kind of on average, more than a little faster than 30 seconds per possession. In contrast to that, the Connecticut Sun are only at like 78. So that means that and I'm gonna not try to do this math. The Aces are playing like 7.5% faster than the Sun. So just like all things equal, you would think that they'd be scoring more points and and giving up more points. And so people get like a little kind of caught up in those per game numbers. But if you can kind of adjust for that difference in pace, then I think that can be helpful. So that's really a nice kind of first level kind of advanced stat to look at. Again, it's like going from per game to per possession kind of stats is something I think I've said a few times. It's an important theme.
So okay, let me ask this. So I'm a big Russell Westbrook fan. Now, there was a lot of commentary that said that his triple double seasons were fluff.
Thought you were gonna ask about that.
So from analytical standpoint, were they fluff, or was it legit, or was it just just not good is what people were trying to claim it to be?
Well, I don't think anyone thought that they were not good. Again, right? Maybe he's only the third best player in the NBA instead of the first. Was kind of the worst anyone thought that season. I do think I'm a little mixed on him, right? He does a lot of incredible things. He does. I mean, that's kind of the triple double season really is piling up counting stats kind of thing, right? And so, if you really kind of dug into it, there was the question about how much he's helping the team win. I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with him on the Lakers and, whether he can kind of shift to the role, because, he's never been a great outside shooter. He was incredible athlete, really kind of can impose his will on the game. And I really respect the way he carries himself. But like the rebounding thing was particularly noteworthy narrative, really that season.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is true, right? I think like he was basically gobbling up all the rebounds, and like Steven Adams was like more than happy to just kind of block out and let him get it. And so, that's why like counting stats aren't really, the end all be all in my mind, right? Efficiency is important. And then what's interesting is whether it's additive or not, right? Like if you think about it, every defensive rebound you get, like if you don't get it, there's like a pretty decent chance your teammate will, right? Like, how many times, right, is it bounce between two teammates and just one of you picks it up or whatever, right? We can all picture that. Whereas, for an offensive rebound, if you don't manage to secure the offensive rebound, then really no one's going to get it typically. And so as a result, like an offensive rebound really is more valuable than a defensive rebound. And so he was getting a lot of defensive rebounding stats, and what really counts is how he's impacting the team defensive rebounding stats or team offensive rebounding stats. And so, the reality was, I don't think he was dramatically increasing the team's defensive rebound. He just was the one who happened to get them all, right? It's sort of like someone that scores a ton by taking all the shots. It's like,
right.
Maybe we'd be better off if one or two of them you passed up. You could get kind of optimize it by getting some good looks for some other players. So I probably, I'm not sure that I would have voted for him for MVP. I don't think I would have voted for him for MVP that season. So, right. I mean, people always said, like, if we'd been born with 8 fingers instead of 10, like, we wouldn't be as obsessed about triple doubles because, we wouldn't count in base 10 or whatever.
Like, okay, all right, look, all right, I'll let it be.
You let it be.
I'll let it be. I'll let it be. I'll let it be. We good.
You would have voted for him?
I'm trying to think who. I think James Harden was the other guy that was would have been.
Kawhi, I think, was like the dark horse.
Yeah, I probably still would have voted for Russ. Probably would have got my first just because of the season that he had and what he did with the team. That I mean, OKC. If you take him off, that team wasn't winning many games, but that's why I would give it to him just because of that alone. But I mean,
was this the year? I'm trying to think back. Was this the year that after KD left him? That very next final year, he had no other stars, just him and Steven Adams.
Well, he had Oladipo because what would have happened, it would have been KD, Oladipo, and Russ. That's what everybody was kind of waiting on. But then KD pulled that I'm going to the Warriors joint, and then that just blew all that up. So that team was perfectly assembled for that. But you know, I don't know.
It played his strengths. Although I will say, if that was the year that Harden came up with the eye roll meme, then I think that would have definitely tipped the scales in his favor. It's around though.
Classic meme.
Yeah. Oh man.
I think that's one. I think that's one thing we have to add to the podcast later. Is what's your favorite gift?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Well, we should probably get to that now because I do need to wrap up. I apologize. As I said, I'm a talker. I could go forever. Your listeners have probably already stopped listening, I'm sure.
Nah.
Yeah. Look, it's been educational for us. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the rapid fire. So this is the game within the game segment, which we call our rapid fire. So my question for you, Aaron, is: are you ready to play?
I am. I'm a little worried about it since you haven't prepped me, but we'll see how I do.
I think you'll be fine.
Are there right answers or not?
Nah,
good.
It's all opinionated. So,
that's what he tells you, but I might say there's a right answer.
Well, yeah, actually, funny story. So another side thing behind the rapid fire stuff is because I wanted to do an analysis on it. So it's my way of gathering data and doing like an analysis project behind it. So
the game within the game within the game.
Yeah, see,
Inception.
Exactly. Chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin?
Chocolate chip, no question.
Got another one. I love it.
Yeah, that's 2 in a row for him.
Yeah. So TV shows or movies?
Oh, we've been watching TV in the pandemic. We've been binging. Introduced my kids to Scrubs. My 10-year-old might be a little young for that. And then Community. Yeah. We just wrapped up that one, which I didn't think I was going to like, but we were looking for something, and it was great. Highly recommend. Do you know Donald Glover's in that? I didn't realize that until I started watching.
Yep. It's one of the hidden gems of his career.
Absolutely.
Your favorite sports moment that you've either seen or witnessed?
Oh, there have been some interesting ones. I remember when I was with the Sixers, I think it must have been the opener. I'm pretty sure Michael Carter Williams had a triple double. I might be confusing this, and in his first game as a rookie, and I'm not sure if it was that game or if it was another one. I believe Spencer Hawes had like an impressive block on LeBron. Those are 2 basketball highlights when I was with the Sixers. But there's no question that the very first year I started HerHoopStats, we've been credentialed for all the Final Fours, and so it was the Columbus Final Four with Enrique when she went off. So, I'd never been to a Final Four, men's or women, in my life, and for that to happen, it was just like even the other game that the Notre Dame wasn't involved in was amazing as well. So I figure it's all downhill from there.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that's been mentioned a lot on our podcast is that particular game, that particular moment.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was like new to, relatively new to women's basketball, first Final Four. So we were sitting in like the upper press box, the hockey press box, right? They call it.
Yeah.
It's like above all the stands. So it was really high up, but it was just unbelievable to be in the building for that.
Sheesh. Yeah, because that was definitely a mean two shots like that, actually. So.
Yeah, I mean, to do it twice is crazy.
So, okay, to stay in that lane, who's your top 5 WNBA players right now?
Right now? Well, I feel then that I should probably do it by the numbers. I mean, I do think that Breanna Stewart's the number one player. She's definitely the, I think everybody else is super talented, but all the other people that I'm going to list, but I just still put her head and shoulder. Well, not head and shoulders, but maybe part of her ponytail.
Part of the ponytail.
Above everybody else. I mean, this year, right? I mean, some of the other. We've mentioned most of them, right? Tina Charles, Jonquel Jones, Asia Wilson. Trying to think. I got to think more to think about who. So I'm scanning my website here to think about who else I would have there. Who am I forgetting? Oh yeah, Griner's also been great this season, and it was exciting to see her in the Olympics. So I think I would have to put them at the top.
Okay.
On the
You
flip
disagree?
side,
You got anyone else? How does that compare to your other votes you've gotten?
ooh,
Did I miss anyone? I can't put Deladon yet. She's it's been too long. Got to see her play healthy.
I think that's a solid list.
Yeah, I think that's about normal from what we've seen.
Yeah.
Somebody threw Candace in there because of just paying homage type of thing, but
she's been hurt. So
yeah. So I mean, that was about the normal that we've seen.
Got it. Yeah. No, I think something like we were talking about Maya Moore earlier, like all the championships he's won. One of our guys, Richard Cohen on our team, pointed out, I don't think that Stewart has lost a championship that she's at a season she's played since, like, I want to say 2017, maybe. Right, because they won in 2018.
They won a rookie year
in Europe and stuff this whole time too, right?
Yeah.
And then they won the Olympics. They she was out the year that the Mystics won. So she hasn't finished a season hoisting a trophy in a ridiculous amount of time.
Yeah, I know Stewie's career and Maya's career as far as
on par.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
they're both insane.
They both come from UConn too. That's that. Hey man, Gino did something there.
Oh yeah, he's yeah, that's cool.
On the flip side, what's the top 5 in the NBA?
Oh, geez, I haven't been thinking about that as much. So, I mean, I still think you got to take LeBron. I thought that the voting was reasonable for MVP. I guess I'm going to cheat and look at the NBA MVP voting here as we're talking. But yeah, I thought Jokic deserved it. And Embiid, I think, he just didn't quite play enough. Where are we here? So I'm trying to stall, doing a bad job. Giannis. I guess huge fan of Giannis. Shout out to Mirren Fader for her Giannis book. I hope people listening are gonna read the new book that just came out that she wrote. Incredibly well timed. And so I still put him, in the top group as well. And then I guess you have to put Doncic in there, Luka. I can't put Chris Paul, as much as I like Chris Paul. I'm not ready to put him in the top 5. I think Curry finished 3rd in MVP voting. I'm excited to see what they're going to do this season, but yes, that's kind of a non-committal word salad there. But so no one's super shocking. I'm not like I don't have a pet player. I will say that Lillard, huge fan of, actually was one of our first kind of viral moments for HerHoopStats. I was at NBA Summer League in 2000, must have been 2019, and then there was an Aces game, so I went and covered that as well, and it was like crazy how little media was there, particularly for practice. But Lillard came to the game, and so I interviewed him. I got like a 30-second clip or something, asking him just kind of his thoughts on the WNBA and stuff. He's like, man, I forget the exact quote, but it's basically saying those ladies deserve to get paid. And so it went totally viral, and they showed it on ESPN and stuff as well. So that was a fun little moment. So he's someone that I am fond of for that interaction and just for his support of women's basketball.
Dame Dollar.
Yep,
yeah,
Dame.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dame's that dude.
That Wait, what was that State Farm ad? What does he say in that one? You know the one I'm talking about?
Oh, what is it?
You know
I'm,
the
I'm,
one I'm talking.
I'm about to figure it out later because I
When they're
can't think of
all
it right now.
when they're all
In the State
beige.
Farm commercial?
Yeah, I thought it was a State Farm
Oh,
commercial.
oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, I thought just I know he got the Hulu one, but
That's okay.
Yeah, I do remember the Hulu one.
He's
yeah,
got maybe he just says dropping dimes, dropping dimes. I think that's what it is.
bro. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Yep, yeah, I remember now.
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah, yeah.
that I thought that aired for like the Super Bowl or something like
It
that
was like
almost.
it's 2016.
Yeah.
He was with Kevin Love. Yeah, I feel like I've said that once or twice talking trash on the court before. Throw the pass, run back.
Oh
That's,
my goodness.
that's funny. Real quick. So, if you get a chance to take over any organization, who do you choose?
In the NBA, the WNBA.
It could be anything.
Anything. You
Yep.
can go Apple, you go Microsoft, anything. It don't matter.
You get the keys. You can do whatever you want.
The United States government. I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of. I guess I got to think about whether you want that responsibility. I gotta say, like, I'm pretty happy. I will say I really do enjoy kind of managing her hoop stats. So I'm, it's kind of cheesy for me to say this, but like I'm actually quite content with it. It's fun to, I do a lot of different things, wear a lot of different hats, and so that's very kind of it's both rewarding, as I said, to kind of talk to our team and interact with people and kind of see them on their growth and kind of try and set them up to succeed. I do the code, most of the coding. So it's kind of thinking about how to get the word out and get more people subscribed so we can really be sustainable and pay our people. So there's like business challenges. There's predictive analytics. Kind of, we have our HerHoopStats rating where we're kind of predicting the performance of teams so we can like simulate, the NCAA tournament or working on one for the WNBA playoffs right now. And so like it's kind of lame of me to say that, but like I'm pretty happy with that. And it's a lot less risk than being president of the United States. That's for sure.
I get that. Oh, I got this is a nerd out question. This is
okay.
So what's your favorite programming language?
I use Python in the data analytics. Yeah. All right. Am I the first person to answer that question?
Well, we don't. Yeah, you're the first person to ask.
Well, yeah,
because yeah, we just don't get too many people out here that we can kind of geek out with. So
yeah.
That's fun. No, I am. There's something of a holy war, right, between Python and R. I think that that's unfortunate. It's sort of like the people that are all about Macs versus PCs. I mean, like they're both they both do stuff. They both run spreadsheets. They both let you use Google Docs or whatever. Check your email. The people that are all about that, I'm not that fired up about. I mean, for me, I sort of learn. When I think about data science and stuff, I always think of it as there's kind of like two kind of ways people came at it, because it's kind of this weird field that's not traditional in the way like physics or math is or something like that. And so if you kind of came at it from the statistician world, then you're all about using R. And if a lot of programmers come at it from the Python side. And so that's like kind of how I think, and therefore Python is just a lot more intuitive to me. I mean, it's almost like R. It's like a foreign language. I've used it a bit and occasionally dabble in it. It's great for visualizing data. And that's one place I wish Python was better. But for me, it's like if I'm doing stuff in R, I'm very often like thinking about how I do it in Python and then translating it. I mean, it's sort of like if you're speaking a foreign language, you still have the thought in your head in English and then translate it. So that's just kind of it for me. Like with our whole website, here's one for you, right? Our whole website stack. We're on Amazon, AWS hosted, and we're using Python and MySQL. We use Django for the website and Bootstrap. It's people that use like Java. At one point we were using React. So, but yeah, so that's kind of what I tend to do most. I like it because I can use it for front end and back end. There's a great community, so it's easy to Google stuff on Stack Overflow and find your solutions. Andreas Mueller and the guys that do the scikit-learn library for data science for Python it's great resource for if anyone's interested in that. And so I've some people are all about it and kind of ask lots of questions, but about why you use one or the other. But I mean, I think either is fine, and I just kind of encourage people to do what they can, what they feel most comfortable with. But for me, it's Python.
Yep.
I'm good. Look, I'm good.
You good?
I'm good.
Look, I will bore our audience because we can always geek out all the time. So I will bore our audience with that. But I love, of course, I love talking about like programming and just engineering as the fastest. So we can continue that.
You know
Definitely.
what is a fun thing that you guys might check out then is a guy named Nick Wan, and he this year he did this like competitive data science competition that they streamed on Twitch called Sliced, like slicing the data.
Yeah.
And they would sort of give people these data sets like 2 hours basically to kind of come up with the best prediction. But then they also, it was like a game, it was like a reality, it was like a game show, right? Like instead of the British baking show, it's like the British data science show. And so they just wrapped up this past season. I think it must have been last week. But if you're into that kind of thing, it's pretty cool. You're watching them like live code. It's amazing. It's just sort of like the online learning stuff we were talking about. Like it's just amazing what people do, right? Some people, my kids, are watching people doing, playing video games on Twitch and on YouTube, and you
Right.
can watch people. I didn't realize how many other people are kind of doing like live coding sessions. But it's definitely a thing. So there's lots of stuff out there.
Yeah, I'm on Twitch as well. So one of the things I'm actually, it was one of my goals for 2021 was to do a coding segment. So outside of just playing video games and hang out with people, I'm trying to bring in more so some of the coding aspect to Twitch. So fun fact.
Interesting. Yeah, no, so I would encourage you guys. You guys might enjoy it. I mean, they've got all the old episodes on YouTube.
I'm gonna definitely have to check
Sliced.
Had to take yeah.
That's my gratuitous promo of something I am just a fan of, right? Have no.
Okay, Aaron, man, where can people follow you at and keep up with your career and everything that you got going on?
Sure. I mean, I think the best thing to do is to follow us. We're on Twitter, right? We're at HerHoopStats, HerHoopStats. And that's kind of going to be the gateway to everything, right? We're tweeting out our articles, we're tweeting out links to our stats site. If you do want to financially support us, which I'd really appreciate it, again, it's just $20 a year. So the idea is that it should be affordable for 99.9% of the women's basketball community. And that's at herhoopstats.com. But we're also, we've got a podcast with lots of great guests, as I mentioned earlier, that we run a few times a week. And we also have video content as well. So between the newsletter, the stats site, and everything, like we're promoting all that on Twitter. So Twitter is probably the easiest way to go. So again, at HerHoopStats.
You heard it, folks, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead, check out HerHoopStats. Go ahead, subscribe, pay that $20 annually. It's not much change to do that. You guys pay monthly for Netflix and Disney, so I'm sure you could go ahead and.
Why you gotta bring up all those? You ain't gotta do all that. You ain't gotta bring all them up. You ain't gotta
bring them all up. Hey, people do that, so it's gotta let people know. So once you come on to the podcast, you become family at this point in time. So we gotta support our own. So, but on top of following HerHoopStats, make sure you follow Capture the Game. That's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, on any of your social media platforms. We're on everything. So if you want to find us on Instagram, it's capturing_the_game_pod. On Twitter, it's CTG_podcast. On Facebook, it's just Capturing the Game Podcast. And also on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. It is Capturing the Game Podcast. Again, you can also find us on any on all your podcasts, favorite podcast platform, whether it be Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever you use to get your find and listen. You can always find it on there and like and subscribe, and please rate us as well. Once again, thank you, Aaron, for hopping in and joining us on this late evening, and thank you for talking stats. Thank you for nerding out with us. It's not often we get to be nerds in our own natural realms, but we really appreciate that.
That's my pleasure. It's been a ton of fun. So, we could, I appreciate it. It's been, appreciate you doing this at the late hour. And, I could talk, as I said, I'm sure we could chop it up for much longer, but it's probably a good place to call it for today. So thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. And, keep up what you're doing.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.